Okay, hold on. I have an issue here before we start.
Up, man?
So, as you know, I've moved into a new place, right?
Mm-hmm. It's nice. It's pretty bougie.
And just before we started, okay, bougie's a little offensive, but just before we started, I was trying to come up with a way for us to lead into this, and I'm absolutely terrible at it. But I opened my windows because I thought we were going to do this on video, but we did not. And I'm looking at them, and just before we started, I noticed there was like a mosquito or a bug there. And for reference, I'm on the 20th. Right, it absolutely atrocious. But I'm on the 23rd floor of a building, right? It's a lot of airspace from here to the bottom. And I'm looking at my window, and there's 3 clusters of mosquitoes. And I can't tell. At this point, I've confirmed that they are not. No. But they're all just sitting on the outside. And I cannot decide if it's because there's something in here that they want. Maybe it's me. Maybe I've got good blood. There's another one. He's just laying on the window. I don't know what they're doing. I'm kind of worried because it's on our balcony. And if I sit out there, now they might be spies. They're not flies, so I'm not inclined to believe that is the case. But if it were possible, I could just take my unit and move it down, because maybe they just like the 23rd floor. I'm not sure. But it's very odd. And you've had some things with flies in your apartment before as well, right?
Oh, they're still around, man.
Get rid of them.
I am, yeah. I'm exterminating them all. They're the most disgusting one. When I knew it was time to figure out what to do was when we were playing. Literally, we were playing D&D. One of our, and I mean, I think you might have been there. I don't remember.
I've been there when they were here before.
And it might have been because for those of you who don't know, Braxton does have glasses, and one of our other players does as well. And actually, a couple of them do. I think about it. But the fly had gotten behind their glasses, and it was just disgusting for me to watch them deal with this fly that had crawled behind their glasses, and that's what I knew. Happened? Yeah, something had to be done, man.
Was it Daniel?
I think it was.
Oh, it makes it worse.
Yeah, poor guy.
But this is freaking me out because there's no people up here for you to take blood other than me on the other side.
They could be having a meeting.
I don't get it. There's another one on the left side. There's even less people over there. I don't know what they're doing. If I could just live in a world where mosquitoes did not exist, just take that part and remove it like a module.
Well, I was thinking you could homebrew a world and just have the world without mosquitoes out.
Yeah, you could do that, but that's not the episode we're talking about this week. On the Dungeon Crawl, welcome to this long-winded intro where I talk about mosquitoes because I absolutely hate them.
You know what's crazy?
What?
We've been doing this for almost a year now.
Oh, heck. Is that next time?
I don't know.
No, my
point being, we've been doing this for almost a year now, and we're still terrible at starting the podcast.
Aren't all podcast people terrible at starting their podcast?
You'd think eventually you do it enough, you get good at it, right?
I don't know. We just kind of go. And considering of that, let's go on into our little dungeon crawl here. Ryan, I'm on a steamroll. Don't stop me now.
Sorry.
I already said his name. I messed it up because of you, but he's Ryan.
And he's Braxton.
And again, welcome to the dungeon crawl. This week, we're crawling into modules. And why you might want to use them. Because I think last week I said I don't like them that much.
You did.
So here we are.
You did.
Let's change my opinion, Ryan.
I was talking about the news, and you said you don't care for it.
Well, okay. Let's see here. I've got my lemonade stand, and it says, I don't like modules. Change my mind. And I've got sunglasses, and I got a cocky look on my face, and my arms are crossed.
But you're selling lemonade, right?
I'm selling sassy looks on my face and sarcastic political responses, as people typically do.
All right.
I'm sure people know what I'm referencing.
Sounds good to me, man.
But modules, man, okay. I see the merit of them on occasion.
Sure.
It can run down your prep time because you've got everything created nice and easy. Yeah, I see you've got your counterpoint there already. I don't even know where to start with these guys. Usually would you just grab one from offline and throw them in your campaign, bing, bang, boom, done?
Okay, so there's a lot of places you can start. Of course, you can just go to your local game store, head to the D&D section, which they hopefully have. find the player's handbook, go past that, monster manual, yada yada. Hopefully you already have these if you're playing D&D. But with a module, you don't necessarily have to have the monster manual, because that does have a nice bestiary list at the very end. Regardless, so you pass those books and you find, there's a handful of them. Let's say you love vampires, right? And you see right there, Curse of Strahd. What is that? There's a really cool dude on the cover. He's sitting with a wine glass in his hand, a card in the other, and he's just got this face that says, I want to have dinner with your players. Right?
I feel like you've mentioned this one before.
Yeah, Curse of Strahd is arguably probably the best 5e module, and it is a recreation of an older module.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it is.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I believe it's just called, the other one's, it's Ravenloft something. If you give me a second, I'm sure I could find it on the old internet here. I probably says at the beginning. Yeah, I think it's just called Ravenloft here.
So I've heard that before, but I didn't know that they were... Is it the same story?
More or less, yeah.
So what was Ravenloft from originally?
So
which edition of D&D?
It's 2e. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Back in the day. 1983 is when it originally came out.
That was before I existed, Ryan. Or at least in this current form of which I currently exist. I could be wrong. This might not be a remake at all. I'm pretty sure it is. Right, so what's the whole draw of this Mr. Strahd man, who I've obviously talked about before for
he's very
podcast.
He's a vampire, of course, which is arguably, that's pretty cool.
As we've stated, I like those.
Yeah, it takes place in a gothic demi-plane of Ravenloft, one of the domains of dread, if you would. You can go check out one of our planar episodes where we talk about those a little bit. But it's so basically the modules, this one specifically, can be interested, if you're just looking at the cover and reading the front. Hey, I want a game that's into gothic area. I like vampires. I like kind of a horror setting. My friends that I'd be playing with like that too. Sure, let's do that. There are other ones like Tomb of Annihilation. Let's say you run across that one. That's kind of more of a traveling jungle type vibe. Some horror as well, but then there are more ones that are a little more fun, lighthearted, like some Ghosts of Saltmarsh has that a little bit. But that's even a little bit different of a different kind of module. We're going to get a little ahead of myself. Point being, you go into the store, okay? You find this Curse of Strahd book. You say, hey, you know what? Let's pick it up. Let's dive into it. It's already, it's just this one $50 book, sometimes less if it's on sale. Expensive. It is a little expensive, yeah. You can usually get them a little cheaper online, but, support your local game stores. So, you get the book, right?
Right, got it.
Done?
It's in my hands.
Can you play right then?
Can play right then. You just read through it, and you get your players, you sit them down, and you've got the book open in your hands, and it says, start here, and you go, right? That's it.
If only it were that easy. Some places where you can get modules, let's say you go to dmsguild.com, dmsguild.com. There are adventure modules here, and this is a little different. So Curse of Strahd is a gigantic, it's 256 pages of pure badassery.
Still not more than Harry Potter.
Right, yeah, but there's a lot of words in here, okay? 256 pages of pre-made adventures, locations, stories, NPCs, yada yada. You can separate sections, and if you really want to, but that arguably it's kind of getting into a little homebrewy already. The DM's Guild can just have straight adventures, and these are usually like 5 to sometimes 20-page condensed story adventures, still modules, I would say, that are a little bit easier to just pick up and play as a one-shot, or as if you're got a homebrew world, you could just use those as a quick little, quest or something.
So hold on.
Yeah. Ghosts of Saltmarsh is like that as well.
What is a module? Is there a size limit? Because Curse of Strahd, you said, is 250 pages. Mm-hmm. What levels does that go through?
1 through 11.
Does that matter? 1 through 11?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was a full campaign, to be quite frank.
Well, full campaign doesn't take you to level 20. Most modules do not.
I wouldn't consider them a module if they did. That's a full campaign setting, maybe? Is Curse of Strahd a full campaign setting?
No. I mean...
Because I think there's a definition
maybe?
that needs to be set here.
Okay. Yeah, maybe let's make a couple lists here of books. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there are modules, adventure modules. I would argue maybe even separating it farther. We have adventure paths, and this is now grabbing from Pathfinder. They have adventure paths, which are like 5 books, sometimes more, sometimes less, of a specific adventure that they have created, and they're just different books that continue the same storyline. One take you from like levels 1 through 4, then 4 through 6, 6 to 8, whatever, yada yada. So you have those in D&D, which I would say Curse of Strahd is an adventure path. Then you have adventure modules, which I would say Ghosts of Saltmarsh and DM's Guild like things, where it's like a 30-page max type of adventure. Then you got campaign settings, which is like the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, which is just a kind of an almanac of an area.
Is that how it's said?
Yeah, Wildmount. I
always read it incorrectly. Every time.
It's all right.
Wildemont,
man.
Wildnut, Bilfer. I don't even know, man. Bilfer. He's a cool guy. I think I have a Bilfer in one of my campaigns. I can use him in a module. I haven't released it yet, though. So my confusion originally with modules is, can you put them in your homebrew setting? How easy is it to do that? Are they plug and play? Because that's what I would be most interested in doing with them.
Yes and no.
I love it. Thank you for the clarity.
That's usually, I feel like that's my usual answer when you ask me something in the podcast.
Anything for D&D, every time it's yes and no because it's all up to you. But for this,
sure.
I've not used them before. The first time I looked at a module, I think was very similar to most people. It's that like startup kit that comes with some Wizards of the Coast stuff. Phandelver, which you probably know from several live play podcasts, most notably the Adventure Zone. That's where they started, and even used some of the characters for that until the end of the entire campaign. So
it's a great introduction to D&D for new DMs and new players.
Yeah, so I guess you could do perhaps what the Adventure Zone did and start with one and go based off of that. But is it feasible to have a campaign where your characters are like level 6 currently? You have played for probably like half a year or a year, depending how fast you go, and you're running out of content, or you really liked this module that showed up. What would you even need to do to begin to put that into your campaign?
You ask a very applicable question, Braxton, especially
That's
with your
what I do.
Especially with your level 6 that you just said, because I'm pretty sure that's almost exactly what I did for our first campaign. Was around probably level 6. I really like Curse of Strahd, and I wanted to play it, so we did. I found a way to whisk my players away into the world of Ravenloft, which I changed the name of. Changed the name of some NPCs. Other NPCs stayed the same. Cut out the stuff I didn't like, and kept the stuff that I did, and also cut out the stuff we did not have time for.
Is this allowed?
Yeah, I mean, why not, man?
Copyright?
No,
I guess you're not selling anything.
Yeah, we're not selling it. I'm not streaming it. I'm not doing anything. We're just playing with my friends. I mean, hell, I could use Lord of the Rings. I could use whatever I wanted into my game as long as I'm just playing with my friends. Well,
this is a tangent, still related. But what if you're recording a podcast, live play something, or you're on Twitch? I'm sure you have to do the material exactly as it is. What do you think?
No, I don't think you would. They've even come out and said, like, the guy that wrote Curse of Strahd, one of the guys that wrote it, Chris Perkins, I think he wrote it. Maybe, possibly.
Some guy did.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he's the lead designer on there. He, in his live play of the module, he changed a lot of it. Even the guy that wrote it.
But he's the writer. He owns the rights to it. It's in the name.
Sure. But my point being that he decided that, and I'm pretty sure they've come out and talked about it before, that tweak it as much as you want to fit your players and your world and your campaign and DM style. Once it hits your table, it's whatever you want it to be, man.
I'm glad he thinks that, because in the world of theater, especially high school theater, if you do competition play, if you're from Texas, there's UIL OAP or one act play. If you do something where the playwright is currently existing, or you're not picking a play off of the currently allowed list of shows that you can run, you have to go through copyright hell, communicating directly with that playwright, assuming they're still alive, or whoever owns the rights at that time, to even be able to use it at all at your theater. I mean,
but that has a script to it, you know?
There's scripts and modules.
Yeah, I mean, to a point. Like, for example, in Curse of Strahd and the other modules, there are, boxes that you are supposed to, don't have to read to your party. You can always paraphrase, and there's certain things that NPCs say and whatnot. But once you finish that sentence, once that box is over, it's 100% improv. The players can do whatever they want after that box is finished. You've set the stage with that script, and then it's God knows what. That's different than play.
It is different, but in the case of Daddy Wizards of the Coast, in the context, I quote from Google, and this is sidetracking, but I think it's relevant for anybody who may be running this online or publicly. Mm-hmm. In the context of the D&D franchise, the actual wording of any rulebooks, monster descriptions, game modules, and such are all protected by copyright, so you can't wholesale cut and paste things. Now, there's limits to that. I assume like we're talking about it currently on a podcast.
I think that means more so like don't cut it out and put it on the DM Guild as your own. You're right, yeah.
So there's limits there. But I think that was probably just a little bit of relevancy with modules. Of course, do your research on who published it, if they're okay with that, if you're running monetized content off of that thing.
So going back to your original question, can you drop it into a... No, can you drop it into a homebrew setting? 100%. You definitely can. Hell, you don't even have to do what I did and change names. You could literally just drop Ravenloft into your game, as it is a demi-plane. It can be anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the other ones might be a little harder, like Tomb of Annihilation. Actually, well, you can make that an island. Who knows? I mean, a lot of these you just got to kind of think about, and you could adapt into your world. I think the easiest, like I mentioned before, are the adventure modules that are just little quests that you can drop anywhere.
Yeah, those are great. Like mods and I just did it again, didn't I?
He's done it.
Mods in Skyrim.
If you guys have ever heard of MT Black, look him up on DM's Guild. He's fantastic. He's got so many. I think he works with Wizards of the Coast. I don't know if he does it anymore. I think he does freelance stuff, but he does fantastic short little adventures, short little quests on the DM's Guild that I highly recommend.
Yeah, see, I feel like once I bust open the modules, can of beans, can of worms for my campaign, it's going to be the same situation as Skyrim modding, where you end up never actually playing because everything's misorganized. You don't even know if it freaking runs. It's just really I imagine it would be a messy thing for me to get into. So right. I don't know if I should reel it back because I really haven't gone into modules just yet. I want to, and I
recommend it.
Yeah, you do it, and you run great campaigns. But for me, if I don't even have a pantheon that exists right now, I feel like things will get established that I'll have to imagine it's going to be this massive knot of things. Which
is why an adventure quest would probably be easiest for you to drop in. Let's say you don't really have anything prepared, you don't know what the party's up to. I'm just going to drop this into them and, just to take up this session while I can figure out what the hell's going on.
Mm-hmm. So the next question, I suppose, when I opened the first module I looked at way back in the day, like 2 or 3 years ago, I got more overwhelmed than I expected to be, more so than I feel now when I'm creating my own campaign, I would say, because there's a lot of text, a lot of people to remember. It was paperback, so I had to flip through and search things. And I'm like, I basically need to read this a good few times so I can navigate it depending on where I'm at of the module. Like if I run up on this NPC, I need to be able to flip to that page and look at it. There's entire descriptions and dungeons when they're at certain points and monsters where they're like, hey, look at the monster manual for this monster. And it was really overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
So there's definitely different types of prep for homebrew versus a module that you're preparing for. Curse of Strahd is a little bit of a toughy one to talk about because the chapters are out of order, depending on how you can go to them, because it is kind of a sandbox. You can go wherever, the players can go wherever they want, so it can be a little tough to navigate. But let's say you're running a little bit easier one to figure out, like, I don't know, most of the ones I'm thinking about are, let's say Out of the Abyss. That might be a little tough one too. Regardless, the easier ones to manage usually have kind of a, you read like a normal book from left to right.
Linear path?
Yeah, a linear path that you kind of work through. And so what I would recommend is you have to definitely read the whole thing, but do you have to read every single page? No. I would say if you're starting a module, read the introduction 100%, make notes, keep a pad of paper wherever you're, maybe on your computer, something. Write it down, any NPCs that come to mind right off the bat, read the whole adventure summary, and then go into the chapters. Chapter 1, read the introduction. Chapter 2, read the introduction, because it usually explains to you what the summary for that specific chapter is, what the players are technically supposed to do. Quote unquote supposed to. Nothing ever goes to plan, of course. Mm-hmm. But what the basic idea is, like at the end of this chapter, they should know these things and should be heading in this direction. So at the very least, if you don't know everything that's happening in that chapter, you kind of get sidetracked. You know where you're supposed to end up. So you have some sort of direction. You can make up the other NPCs on the fly if they're not as important. Obviously keep the main NPCs there and know them like the back of your hand, but you can improv the rest and just know the main points, and that might make preparing for a module a little easier to manage.
And that sounds like good advice, and something you mentioned last episode when we talked about deities and pantheons is that you ended up having to improv an answer for something that you couldn't quite find in the module.
I panicked.
And it ended up colliding with an answer that existed in the module or an NPC that already existed. Something like that. Yeah,
I said an answer to a question that one of you guys had, and I was like, I'm okay, I'm fine. And then after the session ended, I finally read the rest of the module, like, oh no, whatever I just said just completely screws up some major plot thread. And I'm pretty sure the next session I said, all right, guys, last time I said this, that was wrong. Let me fix that.
I don't remember that.
I definitely remember something along those lines. I mean, obviously you guys were like, that's fine, whatever. Yeah. But I probably nowadays, if I were to do that, I would just rewrite parts of the story and change it.
Yes. So, I mean, that's probably what I would do, considering a module that I run will not be thoroughly read front to cover to back, whatever direction you want me to read that thing. It will not have been done.
You just don't have time.
I think if you're comfortable and you've run the module for a good bit and this is what you're doing for your first campaign, perhaps use that as the jumping off point and just go willy-nilly and make a campaign from there.
Curse of Strahd is like 250 pages. I mean, there's no way that you can expect someone to know that thing front to back the first time they're running. And some people do get specialized on certain adventure modules and will run them like at local game stores or at conventions, and that's their baby. They know that thing front to back and can just drop it whenever the hell they want to with their friends or with some random people.
That's what I was going to say. I guarantee you there's somebody out there right now that has Curse of Strahd memorized, at least in spirit. They can definitely run it. You would need to know the NPCs, all of their motivations, locations, and there'd be a certain amount of improv that you could do, like items in shops might be different.
Yeah, and once you get that comfortable, that's when you can really start rewriting stuff. And I've heard some people will have a Curse of Strahd adventure where instead of killing Strahd, they become one of his underlings and start working for him and start killing off some of the main, friendly NPCs that are supposed to be your buddies, and it's just a whole new story.
Somebody mentioned before that I think we said it in a podcast before that they ended up marrying Strahd, so that's a good time there. So it can definitely change, I would imagine. Curse of Strahd is just, like we've said, a really long one, so I'd be worried about running it.
I mean, a lot of them are really long. I mean, the Pathfinder Adventure Pass, since this is technically a quote unquote system agnostic podcast, the Pathfinder adventure paths are really long. I mean, I think they are the best stories. The D&D stories can be a little hit or miss. The Pathfinder adventure paths are incredible.
So why is that, though?
I don't know. I guess maybe their authors are better. I don't know. I don't honestly. Something about their adventure paths just speak more to me. But the mechanics are a little harder to get people into. So I don't know many people that play Pathfinder as much as D&D.
Now, I want to talk about that at one point. So maybe we'll do an episode on it. But I am interested in Pathfinder, and maybe a module would be a good way to get into it.
Sure. I mean, I steal stuff from their Pathfinder stuff, from their adventure paths all the time.
Well, it's not in a while. From a mechanical standpoint that I'm curious. Like combat, how that works, and spells and classes. But we don't need to get into that now, because that's... Okay, well, for 5e, the spell slot system, I'm not... like, we've talked about this many times. So I'm curious as well, do modules ever play with the rules of D&D? Is that something they can do? I'm
sure it's something they can do, but they don't.
Yeah, I guess they want to keep... And I'm sure there's modules for, like, different editions of D&D as well. You could play very, very many different setups and homebrew. Every campaign technically is homebrew, I would say. To some extent. Like, there's going to be something that you alter. So...
I mean, some are more linear than others. Others are more sandboxy. Really just depends on some are more urban. Like Dragon Heist takes place in Waterdeep. There are many different types of adventure modules, depending on what you want. Dungeon of the Mad Mage, I guess, is a module adventure or something. It's really just a mega dungeon, has 23 floors. And you could really just steal one of those floors and toss it into a dungeon in your game. Similar with I'm blanking on the name of it. The Yawning Portal is just a bunch of adventure quests.
Really looked these up, haven't you?
I mean, I know it, man. I know.
You do. So what I want to know more about now, especially, is the DM's Guild. So say I've got an idea of something I want to do, but I don't have the time to write as fleshed out of a campaign or my own module as I could. What? And I don't know if you have DM's Guild memorized right now, but
I got it.
Say I've got, I want to run something with werewolves in a certain setting that's near like this kind of landmark, or with these towns. Like, what kind of search things can you do to try to find the module you want? Okay,
you make me laugh.
Let's go. Okay.
You. So DM's Guild does not really have a lot of. I mean, they do a little bit. So the basic DM's Guild setting or filters have storylines. So let's say you are running Curse of Strahd. You can click their Curse of Strahd storyline, and there are lots of different adventure modules that have been built, like quests, side quests that have been built, integrated into Curse of Strahd, as well as people have added new monsters and stuff. And they have that for every single adventure module, as well as if you're looking for a specific theme, settings. There's ones that's specifically in Ravenloft or in Theros. If you're looking for specific editions, yada yada. Okay, so that's DM's Guild. Mm-hmm. I recommend. We've talked about him before. You heard of Matt Colville?
Oh, yeah, that's a good guy.
He is a cool individual. Well, he made a website with some friends. Maybe it was just him. I don't know. But he's at least pimped it out quite a bit. And it's definitely changed over the years. AdventureLookup.com. This is exactly what you are looking for, Braxton. You can go to this place, and it grabs off of made adventures like Curse of Strahd, as well as DM's Guild stuff, and has monster settings. So you want to run something with the werewolf, you said? Okay, there it is. The common monster, I just clicked werewolf, apply that filter, and the top one here is from the old D&D adventure stuff, but the Forgotten Man, level 6 to 8. There you go. Let's say you want to run something specifically in 5e. All right, here we go. 5th edition. Apply that filter. Now we got some Adventure League stuff. Sure, if you want to get into that. But Dragon's Breath Tavern. There you go. 21 pages long. Levels 3 to 5. And it's 5th edition with some werewolves. Boom.
So hold on. Do they have player counts in there? Because level's one thing, but what if I have like 12 level 2s, you know?
They don't, but I mean, who's DMing for 12 people? What's wrong with you? What sadistic bastard would do that to themselves?
Okay, it would be bad, but I feel like I would need the module to say, okay, yeah, this is for level 3 to 6.
Yeah, a lot
Generally,
of them do
it's like 4 to
once.
5.
Yeah, a lot of them do once you like actually purchase and look at it. Like this says, Dragon's Breath Tavern specifically says a 3 to 5 hour adventure for a party of 4 to 5 characters of levels 3rd to 5th.
3rd to 5th in 3 to 5 hours?
Mm-hmm.
Bruh, that's fast.
I mean,
that's real fast.
I don't know, man. No. You're not leveling up that fast. They're saying it's good for levels 3 to 5. Yeah.
Interesting. I feel like the level 3s would have to go pretty ham on this. That's like a difficulty setting that you could alter with this. And that's another thing.
Some do have difficulty settings, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I want to ask too. There's so many things here. It's just like in video games, which I always make that comparison. But it's like turning on the ultra hard setting, no HUD, shit like that
right.
would be fun for me. And your session 0 stuff I looked up, or that we talked about forever ago and that we mentioned constantly, do these people typically put content warnings and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, they will have a whole intro, like I said, an adventure summary, let you know what you're getting into. Even like for Curse of Strahd, there are people out there that have made specific session 0 content that you give to your players. If you all know you're playing Curse of Strahd, here's the session 0 handout, so you know the basics heading into it. There's even some, like Death House is a very common starting quest to get into the Curse of Strahd world.
I've heard some crazy things about that.
Yes, it's very hard.
I mean, with a name like Death House, I imagine people are going to die. But
specifically, so you're asking about difficulty options. I have a module that I haven't gotten to use ever called Quartz of the Shadow Fae. I actually have it's by Kobold Press, which is fantastic. They do Tome of Beasts and Creature Codex, that type of stuff. They have on their encounters medium encounter, hard encounter, deadly encounter, and you can choose, like the hard encounter has 2 Shadow Fae Cutthroats, 1 Shadow Fae Rake. The hard one has 2 Shadow Fae Cutthroats, 2 Shadow Fae Rakes. And Deadly adds a Hound of the Night into those 4 other enemies already.
This is a lot of preparation these people put into this. And it makes me think, like, how many of these were actually a part of somebody's campaign before?
I'm sure they ran it, yeah.
Right? Like, I feel if I was a stellar DM and I prepped my shit that much, and maybe not like an entrepreneurial thing, not to like money grub, but hey, this is pretty good. My players liked that. Maybe I'll go on DM's Guild and post it up there. Get a little
Why not,
fame.
Man?
Why not? I'm sure I would love to see if any of you out there run modules or at least have your campaign that you feel like, man, this like levels 3 to 5 for my players was kick ass. I want to show that to Crawl. I'd probably like to see that.
I mean, like I said in our first podcast this year, one of my goals for this year was to at some point try to write a module and post it. It'd be fun.
Now, maybe we should talk about writing a module after we talk a little bit of news.
All right.
Yeah?
Wow.
Now, the surprising thing is that we've actually recorded several hundred of those, and it's just on the soundboard that we insert in the recording and post. So every time we have a unique noise. I don't know what I consider that.
I think it's pretty impressive.
It is pretty impressive. But what's more impressive, something that's more impressive, is that you know that one show that ended recently that had a not super great final episode, but it had
Game of Thrones
running, that guy. So they've added some of those people to that good old D&D live thing that's going on. Do you remember I was talking about that before?
I do.
And the current, where did that go on my news thing? Bruh, hold on. D&D
Live 2020?
Live 2020. Roll with Advantage announcement trailer. This is not what I'm looking for. They added some people recently from Game of Thrones, which I don't know why they wouldn't have had before. But the article I specifically had said they're reuniting for D&D.
What?
And I have to wonder how similar to playing a D&D character is being on a medieval show. And
I bet. I bet being an actor would really help for role play stuff. You really get to get into your character.
It has. Sometimes I tend to forget about shit, and I'm just like, okay, I'm just playing a video game right now, so I just want to relax and remove that side. But I thought that was pretty interesting. I'm also seeing, are tieflings copyrighted?
Do you know who they added?
Who do they add?
No, I'm asking you. Do you know?
I could look it up. Let me see here. Because I did have it on my thing. Game of Thrones, Stars of Playing D&D. They added Daniel Portman.
Cool.
Is that Gemma Wellen?
Yeah.
Ewan. Oh, God, these names. Oh, my Lord. IWANRHEON. I don't even know.
He plays Ramsay Bolton, yeah.
That guy. Christian Nairn and Natalia Tina? Bruh.
I don't know, man.
Everybody is crucifying me right now for these names. But that's 1, 2, 3, 4,
cool.
5 people that they're throwing in there.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, they're all good characters in the show. I mean, as much as I hate, I was actually ranting about this to my girlfriend earlier about how much I hated where the show went. But the acting and the soundtrack, I mean, everything about the show was great until the writer stepped into the room. So props to these actors for working through it.
That's just a lot of the situation around acting itself. You kind of don't really get to pick unless you got
to do the best you got. You got given to you.
There's even more people. 1, 2. There's Amy Acker, Deborah Ann Wool, Thomas Middleditch will be in there.
Nice.
There's so many people. So if you weren't already interested,
David Harbour's in there too. Cool.
What is going on? It has to be expensive, or they're just doing it because they love it.
What's not to love, man?
Well, what else is not to love about one of my favorite video games ever of all time? You want to take
Dragon's Dogma.
Not that one.
Skyrim.
Not that one.
All right, I'm out of guesses.
Divinity Original Sin 2 receives new content again. Now,
I did see this.
Yeah, right? Free update. So this is a really
cool.
Great game that is made by the people who are currently making Baldur's Gate 3, Larian Studios. They have been adding over the past 2 years free content that's been like random armor or little updates or even mods that were popular in the Steam Workshop. They've added as options into the game that you can click on. So these are known as gift bags, and they finally added another one that's called the 4 Treasures of Rivlon, and I think it adds a new set of quests to search for 4 ancient armor sets imbued with magical properties. Now, I don't know how worth it it's going to be to you if you've already beaten the game.
Sure.
Because I've gone through this game several times. But they've added what looks like a few really great boss fights that got me pretty excited. But transitioning from that, if you hadn't played Divinity Original Sin 2 already, it goes on sale quite often on Steam. It's even on the Nintendo Switch. So if you have it on Steam, and I think you unfortunately have to buy it to get on Switch, you can bring your save file over, which is really cool.
How cool is that?
Which is really cool. More games should do that. But sticking with the topic of Larian Studios, guess what happens for Baldur's Gate 3?
They had a early access date.
It's starting this summer. I don't know if they added a specific date.
I heard early access was planned for August.
So that's soon.
Yeah.
How do I wish I knew how to get into that. I don't see anything anywhere. Oh, I'm seeing
I don't know if I'd want to. I'd want to wait.
Yeah, but it's going to be a lot of early access.
Because I played the early access for Divinity.
Yeah, and then I kept telling you about all the new stuff that was. You're like, I didn't even hear about that.
Yeah. I didn't know they added voice acting.
Speaking of gameplay, we'll have a new overview of Baldur's Gate 3 on June 18th at 7 p.m. CST.
Another reveal?
Oh, D&D Live 2020. They're going to be having a Baldur's Gate, another reveal.
Makes sense.
A gameplay overview. Dedicated to Dungeons & Dragons, blah, 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 blah. June 18th to 20th, right. 7 p.m. CST. That's really cool. This also mentions the game of
the logo looks so cool, man.
The Baldur's Gate 3 logo?
Yeah, it's got the little Cthulhu Mind Flayer stuff.
Well, I'm just seeing a tiefling guy. I'm so cool. The interesting thing is the graphics look like a cross between Dragon Age Inquisition, like the clarity of it.
It does.
And Divinity Original Sin 2, which is kind of freaky. So I'm interested.
I hope it doesn't suck, man.
If it's basically Divinity Original Sin 2 mechanically with just more graphics and more character customization, I'm sure it will be fine.
And I don't think it matters at all, but I think I want to play through Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 just because.
It's just how you are, man. That's what you do. That's what goes on.
Yeah.
And there's, I think, let me see here. That's another podcast that I could have talked about, but we'll leave that alone. The
Okay.
other thing I wanted to mention is I went on Kickstarter again recently to actually get rid of one of the things I was backing regarding the keyboarding community. Not the thing I mentioned before, but I wanted to not get my money back, but save before it charged me. And I was looking for modules or campaign settings that you could possibly use, and this one looks really interesting. It's called Unfamiliar, a sandboxy campaign for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition with a unique exponential encounter system suitable for characters of any level. And it's got a lot of like eerie, creepy art that I believe they created for it. It's fairly large and it's not too expensive. I think you can get a PDF for 10 euros, which probably is around like 11, 12 bucks or something. I don't know the conversion rate. But take a look at that or read it on your own because there's a lot of information here.
Yeah, I'm down with that, man.
It looks really cool. Warning sign, which is probably bad, but this episode does come out tomorrow. It says 6 hours to go. I'm sure you'll be able to purchase it. But that covers the things I had for my news this time. I don't know if I took Ryan's Thunder again. If you had anything you wanted to talk about.
No, man, I don't think I did.
All right, then we're all set.
I think that was about it.
We should go ahead and move on into, because I didn't even think to talk about this, but writing a module. You're curious about that, and I do not know if you had any thoughts prepped for this beforehand.
I mean, I think it's not too different than writing your own homebrew stuff, right?
That's very true.
But
which we haven't talked about either.
But you do have to write it in a way that it makes sense to everyone that's not you. Because sometimes, you'll have shorthand stuff that you know what this means, or I'm not going to write that down because I already know. And you have to make sure it can apply to the greater person, not just to your party.
You're writing a D&D textbook.
Those are the two biggest things you would have to think about when writing a D&D module that's coming from your own story.
Yeah. If we were going back to what I mentioned earlier, probably about running something from your own campaign and writing it down, it's like, Hagar takes the P wand to Justice, the tiefling, and nobody has any idea what the P wand is or what the stat is or anything like that. So somebody like me probably wouldn't be very good at writing a module without somebody else.
It's also important to try to keep in mind to not make it super hand-holdy and linear. You want to give the party options. Similar, like if you're making your own games, you want to give them options and not just make it the only way is to break in, and every other option to break into this place is at a moot point. You have to do a certain door. You don't want to make it that cut and dry.
Well, that makes me wonder, how do modules that exist currently typically deal with avoiding being too linear or railroading? Because I'm sure there are some that do, that say this is a story-focused D&D module. It is linear, et cetera, and you'll know if your players care about that or not. But how have you seen, like for Curse of Strahd, for example, it's just long as hell. So I assume there's just a lot of room for it to not be railroady, and they've done it not in a linear organization. But how do some of the smaller modules avoid being too linear?
I mean, similar to like when we talked about one shots, you kind of have to
be linear.
Yeah, because these modules, these 20-page adventure modules, are more or less just one shots ish. They're these short little contained quests. I mean, they are more or less pretty linear. The majority of the ones I've seen are obviously the better ones are the ones that do give you options and do allow you to have different paths to take. And the murder mysteries. Yeah, there are murder mysteries that I've read and seen where each time you play it, it's a little different, because before the DM starts it, they roll some dice, and the way the dice land is this the person that did it, this is who died. It's, twists, makes it a little more fun. But I don't know, it can be tough to not make it super railroady.
I think anybody that's creating a experience for players in any capacity has to challenge themselves with that at some point. Yeah. Unless it's a procedurally generated thing. Like I feel like that deals with it well, which makes me wonder, We've got dice. They roll random numbers. Are there procedurally generated modules?
Yes.
I'm very surprised you had that answer. Can you?
I've used. There was one time I ran a one shot that you were not there for. I think we actually ran the one shot because you weren't able to make it. This was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And the one shot was. I'm gonna have to see if I can look it up.
Yeah.
It's by Absolute. No, I'm gonna find it. It's by Absolute Tabletop. And it's a great one shot. Oath of the Frozen King. It's super. They call it an adventure kit because that's really what it is. It just gives you lots of different options to create how this adventure runs and this quest runs. And it was super cool. I really enjoyed it. I think the players did too. And it's really is a different every time type of deal.
So how does it do the different every time type of deal thing?
You will roll a dice, and depending on where they land, that's the layout of the dungeon. Each number will correspond to a different room and to different monsters that are inside of it. It's very varied.
I imagine it's like those scary books that you can read or those interactive novels where it says turn to page whatever, depending on what you choose.
Right. Yeah, it is very similar to that.
Which I think is probably where the idea came from, because D&D is probably that old. Or I don't know when they started doing books like that. But that's really interesting to me. I think if I were to gravitate towards something, it would be those. But now that I think about it, I don't want to be flipping too much through stuff. If I roll a d20 and I roll up on a page that's super complicated, I don't know
you want to do that
kind of experience you had with it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had them all create their characters, and while they were creating their characters, I went around and quickly made this dungeon.
Yeah, because I'm finding myself, like, creating encounters is fun, but I need inspiration. And I think where I would use modules the most is possibly going to that resource you mentioned earlier for searching for modules. What was the name for that again?
AdventureLookup.com.
So if there are combat encounters on that, I would be interested in looking up the certain type of location that my players are going to and seeing if there's any applicable encounters there.
You can do that, yeah.
I would hope so, because I am not super great at making encounters. Like, when I try to make decks in Magic the Gathering, I always try to put too many things in and I can never cut stuff. So I feel like my encounters would probably be too difficult. And I imagine a module would be a great way to plug and play with that. And that's where I feel...
Definitely.
If you haven't used modules before, that might be the best way to go about it. Like the D&D Beyond random encounter generator is great, but it's really just putting numbers and bodies. It's not like this monster synergizes well with that, and it doesn't really let you keep in mind... Like maybe you've got a sorceress already that they're tailing, and she's got this specific pet. You can throw those in, but I want to find something that's like that gelatinous cube and the golem thing or whatever the hell that was before. You know, this is the second time I've mentioned that, but that's just the type of thing I would be interested in looking up specifically for a module, because people are really damn creative with that shit. Like, really creative.
Yeah, you want something that's a little more out of the box, for sure.
Well, in the sense it's in the box, because it's a module, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm following.
I'm following along. But I'm like not for or against modules, I would say, at the beginning of the podcast. For the sake of disagreeing, I said I didn't like them. But of course, any sort of creative experience I'm interested in. I'm just a lazy guy. So.
Well, I think to me the best way, let's say you are currently running a homebrew world.
I am.
This is why I explained last time why I was excited for this new adventure module. You're running your own homebrew world. You have some ideas for cool stuff to come. You decide to pick up the latest adventure module from Wizards of the Coast and read through it, and for whatever reason there's something in there that really speaks to you. You can just get inspiration from these books, twist them, meld them, fit your vision better, and toss them right on into it. Right on into your homebrew world. I do that constantly for different things that I find interesting. And I could not recommend that enough.
Yeah, I don't even want to imagine how many folders or tabs that you've got, because you already buy modules. You were flipping through them before we even started this call here in the Discord that we're currently in with Craig, the recording. What is he, like a raccoon? I don't even know what he is. He's our Discord bot. Just gives me loose shit. I hate him. He's awful. But I want to, and I may challenge myself this week or next week, whenever I can manage to get my players together, to throw like a creative encounter or a module quest. Because if I'm feeling like it's linear, a great way to expand that would be to throw several quests for modules, or just those quest packs that are around in there. Because that can give me, I assume, an NPC, and maybe I can give them a shop. Yeah, that's just a lead that they could run into. There's so many things that I'm getting from what we've talked about today that I could bring in with modules, like you just said, to fit into the world.
I mean, there's one that I have, a book that's not even really modular, but it is called the Tome of Mini Dungeon Tome or something like that, and it's like 300 pages of each page is pretty much just one dungeon. And there's some little backstory to it, but it's just kind of like quick little one-shot material. And even just something like that, just open it up, find a dungeon to toss into your world, and boom, there you go. You have a session if you were super busy that week and just needed something to toss down.
Yeah, I'm sure there's manageable modules that you could look up, like literally modules that don't need much prep.
I mean, MT Black, Google. The guy I recommended earlier, his stuff is very much like that. It's very easy to just hop in, plug and play, and just get going.
Yeah, especially if your family is like, hey, we want to run D&D with you, son. And you just throw in a kind of relatable Google search D&D module that you can run with your family. Guarantee if something pops up with that again. Or look up MT Black. Maybe his shit's family friendly. Or maybe
some of it is, yeah. Or hell, just do the Lost Minds of Fandom. It really is a super easy introduction to D&D.
And then maybe you'll have a world famous podcast. Just like
Dungeon Crawl.
You went there. I also went there. But speaking of the Dungeon Crawl, I think we're running out of steam for module stuff here. Check them out. But speaking of us in existence, we're also existing on social media, which means that we have handles at Dungeon Crawl Pod for Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to shoot us an email, it's thedungeoncrawlpod@gmail.com. And I'm not kidding. If you guys have something that you've written or a module that you really like, or one that you've created yourself or your friend has made, send it our way. I'd love to read it, look at it, maybe use it in my campaign, or talk about it on the show here. We got a little news segment. I will give you a shout out. I will do it.
He is not kidding.
I am not kidding. I do kid a lot of the time. But today, right now, in this moment, we're not doing it.
Please,
what?
Sorry.
What?
I was just gonna please rate us 5 stars. Okay. Please rate us 5 stars on iTunes. Please. Leave us a little review. Say, let Ryan go. Let him be free and safe. Please.
I already left my 5-star review, but you're not being released today. Not just yet. We've got another episode next week, and the one after that is been a year. The 30th, I believe. June 30th. Wow. Isn't
that crazy?
So we're getting there. I don't know what we're going to do special, but you guys are lovely. I appreciate
Braxton,
that whoever listens to it.
Braxton.
What?
We don't get to say this often because we like to prepare literally last minute. But do you know what next week is going to be about?
What?
Everyone's favorite. The face of D&D.
Huh?
Beauty is in this guy's eye.
Oh my God.
The beholders.
You did not.
We're going to be tackling the big, bad, beautiful beholders next week, chatting about them, saying where you can find them in pop culture and how best to utilize them in your game.
I'll be telling you why they suck.
Well, they're so cool. I've yet to use them in my game, but they're out there and the players have missed them.
There's a beholder in Dragon's Dogma.
Of course there is.
There's one in Skyrim. In Dragon's Dogma. There is not one in Skyrim.
You can probably mod one in.
Maybe. Most of the time. I don't know. But he's been Ryan.
He has always been Braxton.
This is the Dungeon Crawl. Thank you so much for your ears. I will be taking them home and putting them in my trophy case.
That's weird.
Stay safe.
See you next week.